All right, welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. I am coming from Boston. Anthony, you could hear the birds chirping and all that stuff. Anthony, how are you? Where are you coming from?
Today we are in Santa Teresa, Costa Rica, and it has been an unbelievable trip so far. And it is, we have one of the coolest settings. We're staying in an unbelievable spot, but the sounds that you hear in the background, I don't know if they do justice to just how cool it is as we sit. I'm sitting poolside right now. I know you're dealing with a little bit different weather in Boston, but it's the birds, the different sounds you hear, the animals, the wildlife that we've seen. The first day we were here, we're sitting on our pool deck and we look up in a tree. I'm going to say it's 15 yards, maybe 20 yards from our seat at the pool to a group of 10 monkeys climbing around in the tree and watching as the little baby monkeys are taught to climb. It's been incredible. We've had some great settings, some great hikes. I'm sitting enjoying some coffee that was purchased at the Sloth Coffee Park, where we went to a coffee tour earlier on the trip and learned a lot about how they make their coffee here in Costa Rica, which is some of the best coffee I've had. It's really been an unbelievable trip.
Well, hopefully you get me a bag and bring it back because I could use some coffee, especially right
I
this
can
moment.
we can negotiate something, I'm sure. I just had to tap into one of the bags we bought this morning to fill up the coffee pot to get ready for today's shows. So the coffee's been great. I tell you what has been surprising to me, almost shocking, is the food here has been incredible. And we've gone, I don't know how many days we're into the trip right now, but I have yet to be disappointed for a meal. And the fresh taste, the flavors, the seafood has been terrific. And we even stopped, we had about a 5-hour van ride from Fortuna down here to Santa Teresa a couple days ago. And we stopped at what looked like a little truck stop on the way. And even the food there was amazing. I had like a fish soup and a red snapper fillet. And I thought, if I stopped at a truck stop anywhere in our country, you'd never find food like this. It has really been amazing. The people here are great. They have a great vibe. They have a saying called Pura Vida, which is, I think the real translation is pure life, but they use it as just hey, live your life, enjoy life, great life. And we saw a car that had gone off the road, and to call these roads is an exaggeration. It's more like dirt trails with a bunch of rocks and potholes, but cars drive down them. And we saw a car that had gone off into the ditch. So this car is sitting at about a 45-degree angle, and you can maybe fit a car going each way on these dirt paths. And so one car is parked there trying to pull this car out of the ditch. And we're kind of waiting in line to get past. We've rented some kind of all-terrain vehicle that we're using as our transportation here. And we're waiting in line, and cars are going by the other way. And all of a sudden, this woman in the car going the other way stops because she knew the guy that was trying to pull the car out of the ditch. And he gets this big grin on his face and says, Pura Vida. And I'm like, Pura Vida, you're trying to tug your car that's sideways in the ditch. And yet he's just happy because he saw his friend. And it's really, the vibe down here has just been terrific. The weather's been great. It's been an unbelievable trip. And I don't know if my son AJ will listen to this show or not. I'm sure he probably won't. He's on vacation. But what a cool moment we got to be down here as he proposed to his now fiance. She said yes. So we had a great celebration with her parents here a couple nights ago. And it's been really special. I've been lucky now. That's two of my kids that have gotten engaged, and I've been able to be. One was in Central Park last hockey season, and now one down here in Costa Rica. To be able to be there with each of them when it happened and celebrate with them that night. I'm a big fan of his now fiance, which still sounds a little weird to say that. And I know you've known AJ long enough to know that there were probably some times where we wondered if the guy would ever have a fiance, but he does. She's terrific. We've had just so much fun together, and I'm so happy for them. It's been an unbelievable trip.
And same name as your daughter, which I know still got to be the bane of her existence.
That's already been pointed out that she's not going down without a fight. Let's just say that Ariana back at home is she's not ready to relinquish Ariana LaPanta. So yeah, it's that's what are the odds of that really
Yeah,
when
I
you
know.
think about it.
Well, congratulations to AJ. And, I don't know how much hockey you've been able to watch down there. But man, I have just been absolutely enjoying the Four Nations Face Off. It's been incredible hockey games. You knew right from day one that these guys were here to win it. And then Canada US, it's one of the best hockey games I've ever seen the other night. I mean, every time USA and Canada play, it's a battle. Usually Canada comes out on top. The last time that the United States before the other night beat Canada in a NHL international tournament was in the preliminaries of 2010. And we know how that went. Obviously, USA and Canada met again in the gold medal game. Parisi had the big goal in the third period. Crosby scored it overtime for the gold medal. The United States hadn't beaten them again in a Crosby in an NHL international tournament and in the Crosby era as him as captain until the other night. Obviously, not nearly as big, but what a hockey game. Starts up with three fights in the first 9 seconds, including the Kachuk brothers dropping the gloves in the first 3 seconds. Matthew with Brandon Hagel because he wanted a piece of him and asked him during warmups. And then Brady, at the end of Matthew fighting Brandon Hagel, he yells to the Canada bench that we're going next. And then John Cooper throws out Sam Bennett there, and Sam Bennett and him appease each other. And then JT Miller wanted to fight anybody, and Parayko has his second fight ever. And then a hockey game broke out. It was end-to-end action all game long. Hold your breath, white knuckle moments. And Jake Ensel scores 2 goals. Dylan Larkin 1. Faber and Boldy were outstanding, and the USA wins 3-1 and now puts themselves into Thursday's face-off championship. Most likely against Canada. We'll find out again today. If Canada beats Finland in regulation, they're in. And we'll have a Canada-US matchup on Thursday. Have you gotten to watch any of this stuff?
Yeah, I've watched a fair amount of it actually. We arrived at the house where we're staying now the night Canada was playing Sweden, and I saw the last 2 periods of that game, and I thought the pace of that game was terrific. The U.S.-Finland game, I saw the first 2 periods, and it was not impressive, to be honest. And then all of a sudden, in the time it took us to drive home that night, and I was like, oh, let's go home because I want to watch the third period. By the time we got home, it had gone from 2-1 to 5-1, and it sounded like the U.S. just put the pedal to the metal and ran them over. And then I didn't catch the Sweden-Finland game at all, but I did watch almost all of the U.S.-Canada game while we were sitting having some cocktails on the beach the other night. And so I wasn't listening to the show, and you'll find this funny because so we're sitting there, and phone service is the one thing that's not great down here. So you really, like, when you're in between places, you have no service, and then you connect to Wi-Fi when you get to wherever you're going. And so we were kind of bopping from beach bar to beach bar, and we stopped, and it was so that, they say 7:00 start, but it's the countdown to face off is 20 minutes or whatever. So hey, let's walk to the next place. We got there 6 minutes after face off, and all of a sudden they panned by, and I was like, I think there's like 6 guys in the penalty box. And so AJ calls up the box score on his phone. He says, yeah, there were 3 fights. So we missed the first minute of hockey and missed 3 fights. But of course we read about it later. But then we watched that game, and I agree with you. I thought I know you and I had talked about this a fair amount, about wondering what the intensity level would be, what the interest level would be. And I think we talked on the last show that until we went on that road trip to Toronto, Montreal, and Boston, there hadn't been a lot of chatter about it around a lot of the U.S. cities we had visited. A little bit here and there, but not a ton. But when we went up there, it was the first time it caught my attention to just, you're in the national media, surrounded by the Canadian national media in both Toronto and Montreal. But it was then being in Montreal and Boston were the cities that we're going to host. And I know there had been rumors about, having trouble selling tickets and all that kind of stuff. I thought once the guys got on the ice that the competition level would be good, would be high. It's exceeded everything I thought it was going to. I thought that U.S.-Canada game the number of times that as AJ and I were watching it, and we just turned to each other and said, just look at the guys that are on the ice right now. Look at the skill level that's on the ice for this shift, for this power play. It really is amazing, and I think it's been to use the word surprise might be strong, because you know the way these guys are wired. You knew that once they got on the ice, the competition was going to be high, but I think this is even more than what I expected.
Well, I remember I asked Charlie McAvoy before the tournament started about this being, people saying this is going to be a glorified All-Star game, and he's like, "Well, I haven't been to an All-Star game, but you could have the All-Star game. I'll take this any day of the week." And he just said there's not one person on any of the four teams that doesn't want to win this all, and there's just something about when you put on those uniforms. And these guys, NHL players have been asking for a best on best tournament for 9 years now. Since the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, that was again another manufactured tournament. They had teams like the Young Star, Team North America, Team Europe, that because they couldn't have all the nations, and because of many different reasons, including the pandemic, there hasn't been one since, and they've been asking for this. So you knew that the players were going to show up. They have been so accommodating in terms of interviews and everything. Throughout this tournament, it's just been tremendous. And then the second that they started playing every game has been absolutely fantastic. The Sweden-Finland game the other night was outstanding. Sweden fumbled that game away, and then Granlund scores the winning goal. But the game the other night, the Kachuk brothers fighting right off the hop, Miller, it was sensational drama. I think the most interesting thing after this is just going to always be a letdown every time there's an All-Star weekend. I mean, before the Olympics next year, there's another All-Star game, and you're
Right.
never
And
going to be able to replicate this.
and I think I don't know. I'm sure there's a money element to this that I'm overlooking and selling short, but it sure makes you wonder if it's worth All-Star weekend. And
Yeah. Well, it is.
I
You're
love
right.
the
I mean, it
idea
is.
now.
It's never going to go away just because of the whole corporate sponsorship and everything that comes with it. I mean,
Right, but
yep.
maybe, and I've given zero thought to this other than the fact that I think part of the reason why you and I both had a little bit of skepticism, again, might be strong, but let's say there was a little hesitation to just how well this Four Nations tournament would go. And I love the idea now of making it be a regular thing with rhythm, where it's every 2 years, Olympics, and then whatever the World Championship, World Tournament becomes. Because then maybe it can have that same, because we kept wondering that there isn't a gold medal on the line for this tournament. It's just it's a made up tournament. But now maybe if you start to develop some tradition with the tournament in the middle, in those in between Olympiads, that you can start to really get some traction with it. And I don't know exactly how they're going to do it yet. I read Gary Bettman's comments and that's what you and I had talked about. It has to be 6 or 8 teams. I think 8's perfect. I don't know exactly how what the 8 look like, and maybe there is a Team Europe feel to it for some of the smaller countries or something. But that aside, that can be debated later. Maybe what you do then is your All-Star weekend only comes in those in-between years where there is no world best on best tournament, so we'll have an All-Star game. And maybe that would then, because if you tried to put an All-Star game in the same season that you're going to have an Olympic, which I know they're going to, but in the same season where there's an Olympics, I mean, who is going to find great value in an All-Star weekend skills competition type thing? But if you did it in those opposite years, now maybe you'd have something that would, if you found a way to make that, we've always wondered, what could you do to make the players value the outcome of those games, make those games more competitive? Maybe there's still a way to do that. And maybe you make some kind of an international feel to the All-Star game too. I think there's possibilities for that. So somehow, some way, I think they make some adjustments there, because can you imagine we're going to have it next year, there's an Olympic tournament, and then there's also an All-Star weekend. And all of the hype, all of the excitement leading up is going to be for that Olympic tournament, and it's going to be oh, by the way, this is also going on, and I just can't imagine.
There's no way to
works.
get those guys. I mean, if in an All-Star type setting, there's just no way to get them. I mean, what it comes down to is playing real hockey. That's what's making this so compelling, and you still get that in an All-Star game. I mean, heck, I mean, look at Kirill Kaprizov. I mean, well, in his
Right.
All-Star weekends, I mean, could his give a crap level is at is zero. You see it.
Right.
His in each of his in his All-Star weekends, he just hasn't shown, and you just see that. The way that Kucherov acted in Toronto a couple years ago, and I just don't know if there's a way to ever bring that here where you have this type of care in this type of best on best tournament. Unfortunately, it's not totally best on best because Russia isn't part of it. The other interesting thing is that they're going to do the World Cup every 2 years, the IIHF, but it's not going to be a IIHF involvement, which I don't know how you could do that because you can't field enough teams. You could field a Czech team, but you can't really field, and you can field a Russia team, but they want to have 8 teams, but you can't really have a full Slovakia team, a full
Right.
Swiss team, a full German team, unless you have IHF being willing to stop their season. So you'd have to get those federations to essentially stop their seasons and send guys over to have that. But what I like about not having the IHF rules is that you can have fighting. I mean, those things, what happened the other night could not happen in the Olympics. Guys would be kicked out.
Right.
It's a different type of rule system.
Well, not only that, but I think you have to worry about, there has to be a competitiveness to it. And if you are fielding teams that Canada is going to beat 14-1, that doesn't do anybody any good. And that's why I threw out just that I haven't really thought too far down the road, other than the fact that it seems obvious that some kind of a Team Europe could be a solution. I know the last time they went with the 23 and under North America team, which I didn't really like that idea. I don't know if that is still under consideration, but you're right about there's not very many countries. I mean, look at Finland. Finland really they are right on the edge of being able to field a team of legitimate all NHL players. I mean, they've got guys in their lineup that don't play every night in the NHL, and their top end guys are certainly at the level, and they beat Sweden the other night. So I mean, I'm not saying they can't win, but any country that is less competitive than Finland is going to be in a really tight spot because, I mean, they literally have defensemen who are playing half-time and half-time scratched in the NHL right now.
Absolutely. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back on Worst Seats in the House. Do you have an outdated or broken furnace? Well, don't let it leave you shivering this winter. Stay warm and comfortable all winter long. How? By saving up to 25% off a new high-efficiency heating and cooling system for your whole home from AquariusHomeservices.com. How do you get started? Well, go to AquariusHomeservices.com and schedule your free estimate today and stay warm all season long. They have incredible staff that will come out to your home and treat you with respect and give you your free estimate. So again, if you have an outdated or broken furnace, well, make sure you take advantage of this 25% off sale by getting a new high-efficiency heating and cooling system for your whole home. Again, AquariusHomeservices.com for a free estimate. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
When it comes to great steaks, it's all about the marbling. And there's a 1 through 12 scale for marbling that will measure what the quality is of the steak. And for Feller's Ranch Wagyu, it's some of the best you'll find. They won't sell their steaks unless they're at a marbling level of 6 to 10 on a scale of 12. It's some of the best steaks you'll find. Just for reference, USDA Prime can be called USDA Prime as long as it's at 3 or 4 on that same scale. This steak is some of the best I've had. You can find it at fellersranch.com. Their vans are in the cities every week. They can deliver it to you. There are also a couple of spots within the cities where you can pick it up. You won't be disappointed. If you're having a great meal and you want to have steak, there's no place to go that's better than Feller's Ranch.
Keep the good times rolling without the regrets. Giggly THC beverages are your go-to for bold flavor and smooth vibes. Zero alcohol and no bad decisions. Just THC-infused cocktails, seltzers, and teas packed with natural ingredients and performance-boosting superfoods like ashwagandha and ginseng. Find Giggly at over 500 locations like Total Wine, MGM, and Cub Foods, or shop online at giggly.com. That's GIGLI.com. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Well, use code GIGLYNORTH for 50% off your first order. Giggly. Sip smarter, feel better.
Hey, thank you to our new partner, Insight Brewing. They are located over in Northeast Minneapolis. The Insight Tap Room features 25 tap lines of rotating beers, THC seltzers, non alcoholic beverages, local food trucks, and so much more. Insight has a 120-inch projection screen, and they will be showing all of the Minnesota Wild games throughout the season. You can also join Wooden Sticks at Insight Brewing at the Tap Room once a month for live shows featuring special guests, watch parties, hot takes, and of course, cold beer. You want to guarantee your seat? I got good news there too. Visit insightbrewing.com to request a free reservation. For a full list of other events, the food truck schedule, new beer releases, and more, follow at Insight Brewing on your favorite social media platforms and stay up to date. Thank you again, my friends over at Insight Brewing.
Back here, worst seats in the house, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Anthony coming from Costa Rica. We can hear the birds chirping in the background and the monkeys. I'd love a monkey to just attack you right now. That'd be wonderful.
Well, the Gianni was really worried because my daughter Gianni had gone to South Africa. Actually, it was COVID year because she got sent home during COVID, and they had they had to go to a seminar about like how to handle monkeys and how to not have food in your backpack, because the monkeys there apparently are a lot more assertive and aggressive, and they'll like jump up in your backpack and start digging for food. And so she had given us all these warnings, all these threats, and every time we said, yeah, we saw some monkeys right up from our pool deck, and she panics like, oh, you got to be careful, you got to be careful. And we say every day, oh, Johnny saw a monkey today in the tree, didn't attack anybody, didn't rip anybody's face off, so we're good. But I did get to see a sloth on a trail the other day, which it's one of my favorite animals. I think they're so funny to watch. And he was a ways away, so I didn't get a great look at him other than through I sneaked a peek through a guide's telescope. I wasn't a part of his group, but just asked if I could look through it and saw some cool birds and stuff. What do you think the temperature difference is right now between where I am and where you are?
I don't know. Let me look what it is here. I'll tell you what, weather, it was a travel nightmare. LeBron and CJ didn't even make it to Boston. It's 23 here. We had 2 blizzards in Montreal, by the way. So what is it in Costa Rica right now?
I saw a headline about that people were worried about the travel getting there. Luckily, their schedule was such that it was not, I'm sure, not an issue for any of the essential personnel.
Yeah, well, it would have been. They had a change, so everybody were all 4 teams were supposed to fly yesterday, but they decided to change it and they flew right after the game. So pretty much. People that got out in the very, very early morning, like I had a 6 a.m., got out eventually. But man, I spent all day in LaGuardia because the whole eastern seaboard. So I get to LaGuardia and there's no visibility. We had one failed landing where we get to about 2,000 feet and the pilot just went right back up. He was going through 50 mile per hour knot winds. Then we finally, 8 hours after 8-hour delay in LaGuardia, finally landed in Boston late yesterday in freezing rain. Chris Johnston canceled yesterday, canceled again today. Pierre LeBrun's not getting here he's going to miss both games today. Lots of reporters didn't get here. But what is the temperature in Costa Rica?
I think right now we're probably pushing 80 but bright sunshine. It's perfect. It's 79, feels like 84. So
awesome. Let's talk a little bit specifically about
7:25 a.m. So we're going to have a great day, I think.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you specifically about some players on both sides in this tournament that have really just impressed me throughout. One is Jacob Slavin. So game 1 against Finland, the Noah Hannafin Brock Faber pair was not doing well at all. And finally, Mike Sullivan made an adjustment and put Slavin with Faber and Hannafin with Fox. And the rest of the tournament has been much, much better, especially for Faber. Faber was unbelievable in a shutdown role with Slavin the other night against Canada. Played 26 minutes, Brock Faber. Assisted, out there defending a 2-1 lead with the extra attacker, assists on that goal by Gensel. But Faber has really shown well. Boldy's been outstanding. And that's really good for Bill Guerin, because there were, like it or not, I mean, when your GM is running the Team USA, there are people that just think that those guys are given free shots, especially when guys like, John Carlson didn't make it, or Tage Thompson, Clayton Keller, folks like that. But Faber and Boldy have really shown well. Boldy, winning goal the other night, assist on the winning goal against Canada. Faber, a couple points in the tournament as well, including assisting on Boldy's winner. That's really good for the Minnesota Wild to play in these type of high pressure games for those two.
No question. And as I was watching Faber that night, I thought, just think about what this guy is doing right now. And the point at which he is in his career. Oh, there's a monkey in the tree right across from me right now. Hold on. I'm going to send you a picture. What he's doing at this point in his career, and that as I was talking earlier about the hold on, I'm going to send you the picture so you can see this monkey.
We'll have to send it
I
to
don't know
Hannah.
if I can do video while I'm on the. I don't want to do video because I don't want to disconnect from the call. So I'll see if I can get you a still photo. Anyway, to look at what he's doing at this point in his career against the players he's playing against. You mentioned his ice time. I think I've always been a Slavin fan, by the way. I mean, to me, I've always looked at him and thought he's like Carolina's version of Jonas Brodin, and it's one of the reasons why Carolina has been defensemen who skate and move the puck kind of built in a similar fashion to Minnesota's defensive core. Where I've always liked Brett Pesce. I've thought he's been an underrated player, but Slavin's terrific. Guy who, to your point, maybe would have been the last in a lot of other people's minds. That's the last defenseman picked by the U.S. And yet he's the guy playing 26 minutes and playing against the best players Canada can put on the ice at the end of a game. I just thought, holy cow, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And to represent himself the way he did was terrific. And you and I have watched it enough to not be surprised, but I'm sure there were some others that were shocked.
Yep. By the way, are you taking the swim now?
Well, I had just walked over to put my feet in the pool.
Because we could hear it.
And that's when there's another monkey in the tree right across from my pool. This is about as close as I've been to a monkey. Wow, there's about six. There's about 6 of them right now. I wish I could send you a video.
Yeah,
but
don't.
I'm worried that I'll disconnect.
Yeah. I would give anything for one of those monkeys to just come up to you and just smack you in the face right now.
Attack?
Yeah, just attack.
It's really amazing. And I am an animal. I don't know, it's an animal lover might be. I'm an animal enthusiast. I love watching like the Animal Planet shows and the Planet Earth shows, and when you see the animals in their natural habitat, not a zoo, it's really cool. And right now I am having a ball watching these monkeys jump from tree to tree as they make their way around our pool. It is. Did you see the picture I sent you? Could you see a monkey in the tree?
I'm having trouble finding it, but yeah, it's hard to differentiate between the tree. Did you go to Did you go to Manuel Antonio Park yet? Are you down on the southern side?
We're on the southern side now. We did not. We went to Montezuma yesterday, which was pretty cool. Little sleepy town. Like when you think about old world Costa Rica, that's where this town was. I mean, we went back in time to go to Montezuma, but we did this hike kind of up a river to the bottom of a waterfall, and it was a challenging hike. It was to get back there. It was probably, we might have gone a mile at most, but it was rugged terrain. They call them scrambles anytime you're on a hiking trail where you have to use your hands, where you can't just walk. And we were definitely in a scramble type spot. And Margot and AJ and I did the hike up to the base of this waterfall. And then AJ and I jumped in this pool of water that was at the bottom of a waterfall that was really cool. Watched a Portuguese guy climb up the face of this rock wall barefoot and then jump in from, I don't know, 20 feet in the air above the waterfall pool. That was really cool. But this little town, to call it a town, it was like a series of shacks, and it was kind of a cool setting. We haven't gone to the park you mentioned. I think we have a day trip planned today somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. I know this will come as a shock to you. I found out at dinner a couple nights ago, I actually thought we were going home today, and I found out a couple days ago that I don't go home till Wednesday. So was pretty excited about that. That's been a little bit of a running joke that I wasn't aware of what day our departure was.
Yeah, well, you're usually not aware of a lot of things. But anyway, Manuel Antonio National Park. So you go down there. It's gorgeous. It sounds like a lot of what you've seen. It's a tropical rainforest. It's right on the water. Like the beaches are white. The blue, the ocean is, the water is just incredibly blue. But I mean, it's monkeys and sloths and birds and all that. But the drive down there, same thing. You're going through these small little towns. You're going on these one lane wooden bridges that you don't even know if your car is not going to land in the river below you that's full of crocodiles. I've been there a couple times, down to Costa Rica, once for a cousin's wedding. And then once where it sounds like I did a lot of the stuff that you did, R&all, the hanging bridges, the hot springs, all that type of stuff.
The hanging bridges were a little eerie, weren't they, to walk across those things?
Well, it's like anything in life. You're just praying to goodness that whoever put this stuff together knew what they do. It's
right.
It's just like you're just trusting your life in just the hands of.
Well, we went ziplining the other day up in the Fortuna area, which I had never done, and I'm not a very adventurous guy with that kind of stuff. I hate roller coasters. I'm not, and so there was some in my family that questioned whether I would do the zip lining, and it's the falling feeling, the falling sensation doesn't do anything for me. So in fact, AJ and Margot are talking about going skydiving today, and I'm like, I'll drive you there and sip on some coffee at the bottom and wait for you to land, but I will not be falling out of a plane on purpose. And but the zip lining was cool, and once you did it once. And so we went up to the top of this peak, and you did 7 different zip lines to get back down to the bottom. And after you did the first one and realized that it was relatively foolproof, but it's still a little bit of a strange feeling to whiz out over a canyon and look down, I don't know how many, couple thousand feet, and be just kind of sailing over the top of it. It was cool though to see, and that is the same kind of thing where you're like, all right, I'm not 100% sure. But then you watch the workers like just latch themselves to the cable and run and jump off the edge in such a cavalier way that you're like, okay, if he can do that, I should be safe to sit in the proper tuck formation to go down this zip line. So we'll see. I might send me a text with the name of that park, because that sounds cool. If we don't have a specific plan today, maybe I'll try to talk the group into.
Yeah, I don't know how far it is from you, but it's gorgeous down there. A couple other things I want to talk to you about. Team USA, Jake Gensel. This guy. It's like, Dylan Larkin even just pointed out the other day, like everybody still always talks about Jake Gensel as this like complimentary player. All he does is score goals. And it doesn't matter if you put him next to Crosby or whomever. He did it in Carolina. He's doing it in Tampa again. I mean, he's the guy is like the size of my right hip, and yet he is as gritty as all come. He has a knack for scoring big goals, leads the tournament in goals right now. He's just, again, you put him in this lineup and you just feel like, when you look at every single line, the amount of threats that they have, it's just remarkable. But Gensel just always seems to be one of the most underrated players in the NHL.
I agree. And I think to me that he's always had 2 skills. One is that he really can shoot the puck. He's just a sniper, and feels like he can put the puck in the smallest of areas with a really high level of efficiency. But he has such unbelievable hockey sense that he looks like a rink rat, and he grew up a rink rat, so it's not surprising to me. But just this unbelievable knack for knowing where the puck is going to be next, and I've always felt like that was the skill that separated him from so many in the NHL, where he just is in the right place at the right time far too often for it to be coincidence or good fortune. And great sense for how to knife in and win a puck battle in the corner in spite of his lack of size. I just think his hockey sense is through the roof. And to be honest, it's not surprising at all to me. He seems like a guy that he dominates games in a different way and we've talked about this a lot with like Kirill Kaprizov. He dominates the game with the puck on his stick. Gensel dominates the game because all of a sudden when a play is needed to be made, there he is. You might not have even noticed him with the puck for 6-7 shifts in a row because he doesn't have the puck a lot. But then all of a sudden, when somebody comes up with a puck in the corner, there he is in the perfect spot to finish from the circle and just doesn't miss. So I think to me, it's his hockey sense, number one, and then his ability to shoot the puck, number two.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then the other player that, just continues to elevate his status is Dylan Larkin. I mean, he's one of the stars in the league they just don't hear a lot about because Detroit hasn't been very good, hasn't made the playoffs in, 8 years or whatever it is. And then he's one of the fastest players in the league, and scores a huge goal the other night to break that tie, and the ultimate winner makes a great assist on the Gensel empty net goal. And I happened to actually fly next. I sat next to him on the flight coming to from Detroit to Montreal the other day. And I'm telling you, he is as good a dude as there is. He's also an unbelievable quote. So I've just gotten to enjoy getting to know him this tournament. And again, Wild fans are going to get to know him really well because you guys come out of the break with a home and home game against the Red Wings.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I just want to go back to what you said at the beginning and think about this for a minute for a guy who's covered the NHL, for both of us that have watched the NHL for years, to say that a player doesn't get a lot of attention because he plays in Detroit. Just think about how strange that sounds, where it used to be like it felt like every national TV game you flipped on was the Red Wings, and that everything a Red Wing player did got about as much attention as, say, a Canadian or Maple Leaf player got in Canada. It just seems weird to say that a guy is unnoticed because he plays for Detroit. But I think you're right. They just haven't played a lot of meaningful games here over the last 7 or 8 seasons, and I think they're close. And we'll wait and see what happens down the stretch. But he's been better than I kind of expected coming into this tournament. He wouldn't have been a guy I would have thought this guy's going to be a major impact player. Not that I didn't think he should be on the team, but he wouldn't have been the guy I would have pegged to say who's going to make a difference if the U.S. has success. Dylan Larkin would not have been at the top of that list. And I thought that line was terrific the other night.
Yeah, I agree with you. The other one is Charlie McAvoy. I mean, I
love McAvoy's game, and you know that.
I mean, it was really, to me, it became like sort of overshadowed because of the 3 fights the other day. But Brady Tkachuk was mic'd up, and he basically was saying it on the bench, is that hit before the Gensel tying goal that McAvoy laid down on Connor McDavid really turned the entire game. I mean, hit right before a big goal, but, showing that you're not going to back down against its best player in the league. And in that game, he had 4 hits, 2 were on Crosby, 2 were on McDavid. So he's going after the big guys on the other team, but he was just superb the other day. And, a lot of people were ripping on him because McDavid blew by him on the first goal. I mean, there's no way to defend that guy. When he's coming full steam up the ice, it's very difficult in the position that McAvoy was in, and he scored a beautiful goal. But I just love what McAvoy is doing all tournament now. And I'm doing a really funny story for Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, he is Brock Faber's doppelganger. They look alike. They wear glasses. They play alike. They had the same D coach at the program. I talked to him, Nick Ford, the other day. So I'll be doing a really funny story. And Mike Sullivan is Charlie McAvoy's father-in-law. And he even talks about it, that Ray Ferraro the other day got confused when all of a sudden McAvoy was going toward him, thought it was Faber. And then he all of a sudden turns around and sees he's wearing McAvoy's jersey. It's
really interesting
unreal.
Because, I've felt that from the start of Faber's career, and you wonder if it's just because of some physical appearance. They're both right shot guys, but the more I've watched him, the more they move. Their mannerisms are the same, and McAvoy's got a little more grit to his game than Faber does at this point in his career. Not grit in terms of competitiveness or willingness to hit, but he's just a little bit more of a physical player, I think. Faber's more what I'd say is a strong player, not a in-your-face physical type guy like McAvoy is, but that might come for Faber. We'll see. And I think you were there when Hines was asked that late in the regular part of the season before this tournament started. And his response was, "You mean more than that they just look like twin brothers?" And when he was asked to compare them, but I think I've loved McAvoy's game from the time he came into the NHL. He hasn't had his best season this year, but he's been great in this tournament so far. And really, I mean, we've seen there might only be one defenseman who shuts down McDavid in a spot like that, and that's Jonas Brodin. And we've seen him be able to turn and McDavid look back over his shoulder after a play where he's been like, I have every defenseman in the league beat when I'm coming in with that kind of speed. Brodin's one of the few that has the ability to turn and close on him. And it was actually one of my favorite segments we did with Brodin over the years was we sat down and watched some video, and I sat with him and we looked at a couple plays where he shut down McDavid. And you know the way Jonas talks, he's about as humble as they come. But he'd just get this little grin on his face because we paused it at one point. I said, okay, look at right here when McDavid looks back. I got to believe what's going through his mind is, who the hell was that just closed on me when I had a step on him to the outside? And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and, yeah, that's why I like to play against him or something like that. When McDavid's going like that, that's not McAvoy's fault. That's just McDavid is McDavid for a reason. There aren't players on the planet that are able to close like that. And I think the way the U.S.-Canada game went the other night, it just feels like it would be a letdown if it's anybody other than Canada that's opposing the U.S. in the final. And if they beat Finland, they're basically in, because I can't imagine a scenario where Sweden beats the U.S. I suppose they could beat the U.S. in regulation, but I don't know. It just feels like it's meant to be U.S. and Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll see what happens today. Finland versus Canada, and then Sweden versus the U.S. Maybe we'll get we'll see if Philip Gustafsson gets a shot or if they come back with Ullmark in Boston. It would make probably sense to come back with Gustafsson because he was pulled the other night only because of illness. And if that's the case, we'll get to see Faber and Boldy against Gustafsson, which would be intoxicating. And then obviously Eriksson and Brodin as well. Eriksson and Brodin have had really good tournaments as well. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the Minnesota Wild.
Hockey isn't the only thing happening on the ice, and as lakes are freezing over, it's time for ice fishing. OnX Fish offers the most comprehensive fishing tools for increasing your confidence and success on the hard water. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. OnX Fish also shows you hotspots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. For a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota and Wisconsin, or go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with a Royal Credit Union certificate. Whether you're saving for college, a vacation, wedding, or a down payment on a house, Royal's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate can help you reach your savings goals faster. Royal certificates have no minimum opening balance and a locked-in rate for a guaranteed return at maturity. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a Clamshell Beach Resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. and you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
Back to your Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Anthony coming from Costa Rica. I'm coming from Boston. Anthony, it does
just
feel,
a quick update for you, Michael.
Yeah.
I lost the monkeys for a couple of minutes because they went through a tree, but they're back, and they're only about 2 trees away from my deck right now. So if I get distracted because I'm keeping an eye on how close they get to my patio, that'll be why.
Yep. It would be still fun if you got attacked. All right. But before we talk about the Wild, I did want to talk to you. So there are a couple things that the NHL is doing that they're just experimenting with things in this tournament. One is the 3-2-1 point system. Now they've had to do that because of what would happen, tiebreakers and things like that in a short round robin tournament. But it definitely sort of changes the way that you play at the end of the game. And it would make it really interesting late in the season where all of a sudden you're trying to fight for a playoff spot, going all out at the end of regulation and things like that. What do you think of the whole 3-2-1? I know that you've said that you've done those where you've actually taken the NHL standings in the past, put them at 3-2-1 format, and it doesn't change a whole lot, right?
It hasn't. It's been in like a position maybe where the second place and third place teams in a division flipped. It's only been a point or two. I've always, in theory, liked the system only because it feels like there shouldn't be some games worth 3 points and some games worth 2. And when you're trying to gain ground in a playoff race and the 2 teams ahead of you play and go to overtime where they're both going to end up with a point, there's nothing more frustrating than watching that. So in theory, I've always been a fan of it. I also, but to your point, I did for 2 years in a row at the end of the season, I went through and said, okay, how much would it have changed? And I think it would have been, I can't remember the 2 years I did it. This would have been probably pre-pandemic, so 5-6 years ago. But the 2 years in a row that I did it, it would have changed, I believe, one playoff spot where like the 9th team would have gotten in instead of the 8th team. And it only would have modified a couple playoff positions, not by much. So it made less of an impact. Now, that's because that might become more relevant if teams played differently, to your point, where now I know I got to win this game in regulation because I got a chance to get a third point. So it may change more than how it changed it retroactively, because to go back retroactively, teams might have played it differently. And so it might have more. I think in theory, it's hard to argue that it makes more sense and that it's a more fair way to judge the standings, because winning a game in regulation should count more than winning a game in overtime if you're going to give the other team a point just for getting there. So I kind of like the idea. I don't have a strong opinion about it either way, but if I was pressed to make a vote, I guess I would probably vote in favor. Now, the only other thing is that I'm always hesitant. I'm kind of when it comes to records and history, I'm always a little hesitant to make major changes, where now it makes it so it's impossible to say, because now to say you're a 100-point team, well, now you're going to have another, 8 100-point teams in the league. And not that should be a reason not to do things, but it's kind of like when all these teams refer to themselves as 500, and I'll say, you're not 500 if you're 10-5. You've won 10 games, you've lost 15. You're not 500. And you can't have a league where 26 of the 32 teams are 500. But so I hate when people refer to themselves as 500 that way. So, things will change. I don't know. What do you think? I guess I'd vote in favor of it if they pushed it, but I wouldn't. I don't feel strongly enough to like stand on a soapbox and argue for it.
Yeah, I don't like it. I just think it just, again, I think it's going to make things much more difficult late in the season for teams trying to catch up. What I don't like, and I know you and I debate this all the time, is the playoff format. I just don't like that every single year we got to basically, like, I'm almost rooting for the Wild to finish top wild card spot in the West, just so we could have it different and have them go face Edmonton or Vegas in the first round. I'm just so tired of
Yeah, and I
playing.
like it the other way.
I mean, and I'll be honest, I don't think the players love it either. Like, they're tired of playing Dallas, Colorado, and Winnipeg all the time as well. And you could say it's cyclical, but this is the format that you could have this great regular season like the Wild are having, and then wind up facing a Stanley Cup contender like Dallas in the first round every single year, and not change it up. To me, the whole point is seeing different teams in the playoffs as well. I just don't.
Yeah, I like the building of the rivalries in it. I also like the fact that going in, like, I'd like to see it go the other way. I'd like to see it eliminate the wild card and just play the top 4 in your division, go on, and if you're 4th in your division, you should play you play the division champ. If you're 3rd, you play the 2nd. And
I would agree with that if the regular season standings actually meant something in your division. But in this league where there are so many teams and you're not even playing the teams in your division the same time, your division record really means nothing.
Well, I don't disagree, but I think if you go to, I know they've talked about expanding the season to 84 games, and if you went to 84 games, it's a really simple fix. Now you could play the 7 teams in your division 4 times, and because those are the games, like, that's what the fans get excited about. And like when we were in Denver late before the break, they hype it up. It's a division rivalry game. And I think that's great for the game. I think if you knew you were playing all these teams 4 times and then had to get through a couple of them. We were talking to John Hines about this when the Wild went east, and we were talking about the difference between the West and the East. And it was, because teams are built to try to get through the teams they know they have to get through in your division and in your conference for the playoffs. And so if you feel the need to have wild cards, which I've always been of the belief that if you finish 5th out of 8 in your division, do you really have a strong case to pound your fist on the table and say we should be in the playoffs? I mean, you finish 5th out of 8. I don't really totally understand that. But even if you are going to have wild cards and say that if the 5th place team in our division is better than the 4th place team in the other, we're going to take them. And I can live with that. But then I'd like to see the crossover only happen if it has to. So this year would be a perfect example where Colorado is right now holding the top wild card spot. Vancouver is number 2. Why have Colorado go to Edmonton and Vancouver go to Winnipeg? I mean, just keep them within their division unless you have to. If you have both wild cards from the same division where one has to cross over, so be it. But, I also think when you look at let's say you went to the old way of sorting things out where the division champs would be the 1 and 2 seed, and then you'd have your 3 and 4 and whatever. Well, right now, if I remember, I don't have the standings in front of me, but I think Dallas and Vegas had the same number of points, and they would be the 3 and the 4 seeds, and Minnesota would be 5 and going to Vegas. So is it really that big of a difference to go from being the 3rd in the division and play Dallas, or be the 5 seed and go to Vegas? I mean, Dallas and Vegas have the same number of points, so there isn't a competitive disadvantage really. I mean, LA I think then would be 6 and they'd be going to Dallas instead of Vegas. I mean, that would be your swap, would be that Minnesota and Dallas would be facing Vegas and LA instead of each other. And I just don't, like, why send Dallas to LA and be playing games that I suppose they play them for the Wild at 8:52 every time anyway. But I mean, let's let the teams play against, put Vegas against LA again. That's become a great rivalry. Those games have become fun. Put Minnesota against Dallas. Those games are intense and there's hatred. And I mean, that rivalry is cool right now because of the fact that they've had some great playoff series against each other. And I know they haven't gone Minnesota's way, but
no, I don't agree with you. I think that rivalry is there because the Wild never beat them, and it drives Wild fans nuts. I think that's where the hatred stems from. I just.
But that's fine. Like, if you don't like them, beat them. I mean, so take a look at any other league. Like, look at the NFL. The Vikings, they know every year they got to get through the Packers, or when the Bears were good, the Bears. I mean, I guess now it would be the Lions. I mean, but that makes it fun. You're going to see those teams twice a year. And you know that if you can't beat those teams and win in those games, your chance for success is unlikely. I mean, I just think it's such a marginal change in most cases to say like the solution is to try to change the playoff format. I mean, most years it doesn't change it much. You might play a team with one more point or one fewer point. And do you really think the difference of Minnesota having playoff success right now would be under the system that you propose? The Wild would go to Vegas in the first round.
I'm not talking about I'm not talking about playoff success. I'm talking about making it more exciting, where you're not playing the same teams every year. Like to me, there is no excitement every single season knowing that the Minnesota Wild, no matter what they do, are going to play Dallas or Colorado or in the first round. I think the point is to create different matchups every year. And I just think that this
right, but look
the
at
division
over the
format,
years.
Anthony. The division format only makes sense back in the old days when you were playing inside your division 8 or 10 times. Now you're not even playing the same number of games in your division against every team. Some teams you're playing 3 times in your division.
No, I know, and that's I said that earlier. Like I'd be in favor of making sure you played everybody in your division 4 times, even if it meant that there's a couple teams in the Pacific, for example, that a Central team would only play twice. But I just think when you look over the years, how many times have the Wild, this format has been in place essentially since 2013-14. So how many times have the Wild played Dallas in the playoffs?
3 times?
Yeah, I thought it was only 2, if I remember right. But I think they've played them twice. They've only played Colorado once. They played Winnipeg once. They've played St. Louis, I think, 3 times. They had Chicago 3 times in a row in the early years. I mean, it's just, it isn't like I think when they faced Chicago those 3 years in a row, and we all thought, they're going to have to face Chicago forever. Well, it lasted 3 years, and then they haven't seen them since. So I just think
we know why that is.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, it isn't like it would be different if they had faced Dallas, let's say, 6 times in an 8-year span or something. And I think those rivalry games and those rivalry series are so intense. I mean, look at in other divisions too. Look at Boston playing Florida and how exciting that series would be, has been, and will be. The Vegas LA one that I mentioned before, potential of Edmonton against some of those other teams in the West, where that I just think those things have a chance to really add to fuel some rivalries that make them intense and exciting. I agree with you on the schedule imbalance. I would love to see it, because right now the way it is, just in case there's 2 teams in your division that you only play 3 times instead of 4. And the trade-off for that is that you play everybody in the East twice, which I agree with that. Play everybody home and home from the East. I like that. You should go to every city every year. But I'd rather see the Wild have a rotation. If you're going to keep the schedule at 82 games, pick 2 teams in the Pacific that you only play twice, instead of taking those 2 games away from your division, so that you'd play everybody in your division 4 times and you'd have 2 of those teams that you only play twice, rather than making that sacrifice be within your division to say, we're going to take 2 teams in your division that you only play 3. I feel like you should go to every divisional city twice. They should come to you twice every year.
Yeah.
And
it's only going to get worse when they expand. It's only going to get worse when they expand. And I don't know. To me,
but I hope when they expand that they do it where you play in your division 4 times, and if it means that maybe half of the Pacific you only play twice, I'd be okay with that. I mean, for you and I, we'd lose some trips that you potentially like, because you'd have more years where you only went to Vegas once or LA once or some of those fun cities. But I think it's better for the league if you make sure that you play everybody in your division twice at home and twice on the road. Because the one point you made that I agree with is that you're evaluating yourself compared to teams within your division. You should be playing almost exactly the same schedule. And it's really only off by 2 games, but those 2 games sometimes feel larger than they are.
The other thing that they have right now are 30 seconds extra timeouts, so 2.5-minute TV timeouts, and a minute shorter intermission. And I could tell you the players freaking hate it. And it is brutal being in the. I know it doesn't sound like much, but having an extra 30-second TV timeout, which is a minute and a half extra each period, it feels like an eternity in the arena. The players are just skating around, knowing what to do. These guys, maybe based on habit, they go and stand in the faceoff circle, and they're just begging for the linesman to drop the puck and start play. The other thing it does, and maybe fans would like this, but I could tell you from talking to Eric Holla the other day, he called it awful, just awful, is that you don't play the third and fourth liners because that extra 30 seconds allows is you to come back with your first or second line almost all the time after a TV timeout because they're getting extra rest. And so like we saw it with Sweden, we saw it in Finland. Those guys don't play. Like Holla basically sat the back half of that one last game. The Gus Nyquist line basically didn't play the entire third period because of it. I don't know. It feels like, when you're actually at a football game in the stadium with all the long TV timeouts, how just brutal that feels.
It's brutal.
To be in you might not notice it at home, but in the arena, it has stunk. I don't like it, and I hope they don't change it.
Yeah, and I haven't been watching the games closely enough to get that feel, and it does feel different when you're in the arena for sure. And that's what I love watching NFL football on television, because when they go to their unbelievable number of commercial timeouts, I just switch to another game. And nothing drives me crazy more than a touchdown is scored, they go to TV timeout, they come back and do the kickoff and go to another break because they had a long drive or something where they can't. So their TV timeout rules are a little different than the NHL, but I know what they're trying to do. It creates an extra 30 seconds of commercial time and they view that there are more eyeballs during the period than there are in the intermission. So the trade-off being that we're only adding a minute and a half to the game length or a minute to the game length, and yet we're getting more value for the buck in those commercial breaks. But I don't doubt for a minute what you're saying is valid, because I even now feel like sometimes when you get a back-to-back couple of TV timeouts, and again, just so fans are aware, it's the first whistle after 14, 10, and 6, but there's a minimum amount of time they have to go in between TV timeouts, and you can't go to TV timeout during a power play or right after a goal. So a lot of times you might get the under 14 TV timeout might not happen until there's 8 minutes left in the period. And now after 8 minutes, you go to TV timeout. Now you come back, I believe it's 90 seconds. It's either 90 seconds or 2 minutes, where then you enter what they call another break zone, where now the next whistle, as long as it's not a goal or an icing. So you might have a TV timeout at 8 minutes and another one right away at 6 minutes. And then you got another one coming up because you have the under 6 break. So I always feel like even that becomes so disjointed. So I can only imagine what adding 30 seconds to it does, especially if you get a couple of them back to back.
Yeah. And then a couple other little things is 10-minute overtimes. I love it. I hate, me, I do not like the shootout.
Yep. I hate the shootout. And
obviously it can't go on forever. I know McKinnon didn't love it because he said he was gassed, but he was gassed because he was trying to go 1-on-1 every single 1-on-3 every single shift in overtime against Sweden, which, by the way, Gustafsson was unbelievable. But I love it, and I think that they're going to be a very serious debate about a 10-minute overtime at the GM's meetings coming up. The other thing that I've loved this tournament that I don't think that we'll see.
Let me just interrupt there for 1 second, because I'd love to see it, even if it at least got to 8 minutes. But this to me is tied into going back to your point system question, where I'd love to see it, instead of going to 3 points for a winner, I'd love to see eliminate the bonus point for the losers in overtime and just say, we're going to play 8 minutes of 3-on-3, but you either win or you lose. And maybe if you get past 8 minutes and it ends up in a shootout, you give a point, because the shootout's such a stupid skills competition anyway. Maybe you do something with it there, but in no other sport do you get a bonus point just for getting to overtime. You don't get it if you lose a baseball game in extra innings. You don't get it if you lose a football game in overtime. You don't get it in basketball. I don't really know why. I mean, I know why. It's because GMs all want to say they're 500, but to me, that would be the better solution than going to a 3-2-1 system, is just say, you know what, if you lose, you lose. And that's the way the game is played. And if you don't like players being gassed, well, then use more guys in your 3-on-3. Don't just keep going back to the same guy over and over again. I think there are solutions for it.
I think the genesis of it was, obviously it used to be 5-on-5. And games ended in a tie. If you lost in overtime, you did lose the point. But I think when they went to 4-on-4, then eventually 3-on-3, a lot of GMs and the league felt sheepish that you were taking a 5-on-5 game and turning it into essentially a skills competition in 3-on-3, and that it wasn't fair if all of a sudden you were going up against, McKinnon, McCarr, and Rantanen, let's say, if he was still in Colorado, or Draisaitl and McDavid.
No
and so,
right.
That's I think the big reason. The other thing that I love that isn't, a part of isn't actual game stuff that I think that they're going to try to do, at least on national broadcast, is the cameraman that sits in the penalty box that comes out for goal celebrations. It's so cool. The view that fans are getting of the celebration, the bench flyby of this guy skating on the ice, essentially with them. I think it was a TSN invention at World Juniors, and they brought it here to this tournament, and it's been awesome. So look, this
you've seen that on FanDuel Sports Network on Hockey Day Minnesota for years. We've had a camera guy on ice that is able to skate out there during warm-ups, during the anthems, during the goal celebrations. It's a terrific vantage point, no doubt. And we saw it. Where were we late? I think it was in Denver, where they had the cameras on cables like they do for the NFL, where you get those really great shots from just above the huddle. And they had it for the game in Denver. And so Wild fans, if you were watching that game when the Wild played the Avs just before the break, it gave a really cool vantage point for the game, from where you almost get a feel of like what the players are seeing as they come into the zone.
Yep, absolutely. Couple more for you on the Wild coming up. So Ryan Hartman came to Montreal the other day, met with Gary Bettman. Bettman will put out his ruling in the coming days here. It'll be a really detailed ruling. So the league will put that on a press release with his ruling. So that's how that comes out. People keep on asking for updates. Like, this is like just something that, is going to be upheld. No, that's not the way it works. Once you do an appeals process, it's a whole legal thing. So there will be a detailed ruling. Again, if he still gets 6 or more games, if it's upheld, or even if it's decreased to 8, as long as it's more than 6, it'll go to an independent arbitrator. So we'll see if he can get any games or some money back eventually in this process. What do you think? It sounds like Lauko is going to probably be back after the break. So the Wild will have to bring back a forward. I think Liam Ogren is somebody that, really showed himself well. Obviously, it's going to depend on what line he's on, or they're going to bring back Devin Shore, one of the forwards, but they're going to need 1 or 2 forwards after the break. We got to wait still for the Kaprizov timeline. I don't think the team is still very sure on exactly when he's going to be back. So that's the big thing. But what do you want to see from the Wild when we come back?
Well, I don't remember if we talked about this or if it was when I was on a radio show, but to me, the biggest thing, they have to keep themselves healthy between here and the finish. And I don't know, that's not like a magic button they can push or something they can change to do it, but they have fought just an unbelievable injury bug in the first half. And if they can't stay healthy, I gotta feel like there's going to be an exhaustion factor for them. I felt like the team late before the break looked like they were running on fumes. They had so many guys that were being asked to play more minutes, heavier minutes, more impactful minutes than they otherwise would have, just because they were all trying to make up for guys that were out. So Kaprizov's got to come back and be close to Kaprizov. The top 4 defensemen have to stay healthy. And if they can do those things, I really think the rest of the team, the way some of the other guys, Marcus Foligno elevated his game late. I thought he's been terrific. Getting Johansson's speed back in the lineup. Boldy had been in a little bit of a slump, but we thought maybe this tournament would ignite him. I think they've just put themselves in a great spot, and it all is going to come down to, can they keep their guys on the ice? Gus seems to have found his game again, and they're going to need Fleury as well down the stretch. But I think it all is going to come down to health for this club.
Right. They come back. They have 5 of their first 7 on the road, and then they have 10 of 11 at home. So schedule does line up pretty well here. Obviously, they got, what did they got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games until the trade deadline, the March 7th trade deadline, when they were in Vancouver that night. Right now, again, no cap space, so it's going to be very hard unless there's a season-ending injury for Billy Guerin to do much. Just a couple questions, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Somebody asked me my biggest highlight of the Four Nations. I mean, so far, my biggest highlight have been games. I mean, the games have been such drama. This is Dog Father that asked this question. And then also, hanging out with my colleagues away from the ice. I've had 3 really good meals in Montreal. I went to Milos. Have you ever been there? The Greek restaurant? It's like all over.
No.
They have Vegas. They have a couple in New York, I believe. We went to the original one in Montreal. Elliot Friedman, Kyle Bukauskas, Gary Lawless, and I. It was unbelievable. Then I went to La Medusa, which is a great Italian restaurant in Montreal.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, Michael Farber, the Hall of Fame hockey writer for SI. And then we went, we went to Gibby's, that great steakhouse in Old Montreal. I went with David Amber, Kevin BX, Elliot, trying to think who else was there, Corey Massisak, Eric Engels, Elliot.
Gibby's is not my favorite spot. It's a cool setting, but it's not my favorite for steak. The steak
fun,
itself.
though.
I mean, it's good,
fun.
but
really good.
It's great setting there.
Yeah.
I got an update for you. I got 2 monkeys that are within 10 feet of me right now.
All right, good. I'm going to let you deal with them. And then that's a good way to wrap up the show. And send me an update. Somebody did ask about Brock Nelson, if I still think it's aforementioned that he comes to Minnesota as a free agent. I still do, but I will say, he's not playing a top role here, and we haven't seen a ton of people like I don't know. He's not jumping out to me as somebody like I would 100% just go and say, I'm getting that guy. I know Billy loves him, but you do wonder if after the tournament they're going to feel the exact same way.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell because he wouldn't be a 4th line
left wing
guy if the Wild went and grabbed him, and he's not playing. You're not facing the world's best on up and down the opposing lineup. So I think it's a little bit tough to evaluate. He started slowly this year, but has definitely come to life. I still really like his game, and I think he'd be a great addition. But he's not
such a good leader, too. Such a great guy.
Yep. But he's not going to come in and be a number 1 center. He's going to come in and be a guy that could play in the top 6, maybe the middle 6, and just be a responsible player that can also bring some offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody asked who's been my favorite quote so far. I think probably it has been Dylan Larkin. He's such a great quote. Jacob Slavin's really good too. So it's been, there's nothing like dealing with the Kachuk brothers as well. Austin Matthews is hilarious. I've had a couple of funny moments with him this tournament. I kind of got him in trouble the other day because he basically fat shamed Bill Guerin. And Billy called him up and jokingly gave him crap. He basically, they surprised John Hines on his 50th birthday, Anthony, with a cake. And so he made some joke to me that they just were told to keep it as far away from Billy as possible. And I decided to tweet the quote. And so Billy saw it and jokingly called up Austin and gave him a bunch of what. So I'll let you get back to your vacation down there, Anthony. I appreciate you doing this pod from down there. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Royal Credit Union, Feller's Ranch, Twill and the Edina Galleria, Onyx Fish, Clamshell Beach Resorts, and Giggly THC Beverages. Talk to you next week, Anthony.
Sounds great.
So much coming